this session, we're going to talk about how to learn language through play. In the early years, language development includes skills such as recognizing letters, both their names and their sounds, and how they fit into the alphabet, knowing which letters are the vowels, understanding basic sight words, syllables, knowing the difference between nouns and action verbs, and to be able to figure out story sequencing. So let's start with letters. A great way to develop letter skills is by I Spy. It is one of my favorite ways to add in learning that's a game. It's not just about I spy a color, but you can do it with letters as well. I used to do this game every time we would stand at a bus stop waiting and bored, and I didn't want kids to be running wild and running onto the street. So we'd play the I Spy letter game, where we start with the letter A and we work our way to letter Z and see how far we could look around at the different store signs and see if we could find all the letters of the alphabet. You do I spy the letter A, and then we had to look for the A. You can also do magnets. Magnets are fantastic. If you get a set of uppercase and lowercase letters, you can get your child to match the uppercase and the lowercase, and you just put them all over your fridge. It becomes a fun little game that they can do. If you don't want to use your fridge, you can also use magnets on cookie sheets so that they're more hands-on and small scale instead of the large ones. You can play a letter hop game. So what you do basically is on recipe cards or on pieces of construction paper, you put the letter. And then you ask your child to jump to that letter. Hop to the letter A, hop to the letter B, hop to the letter X. You don't have to do it in alphabetical order. You can do it in whatever order you would like, and just get your child used to finding letters on the fly. In fact, doing it out of alphabetical order is a great idea because they don't anticipate which one comes next. There are various sensory activities that you can do to practice letters, drawing letters, and to be able to understand letters as well. For example, if you fill up a small tray with some salt, they can use a paintbrush, or they can use a stick, or they can use their finger to be able to write letters. But you can also do things like in a Ziploc bag, add some pudding or some shaving cream. It's also another tactile way. You can use sandpaper, which is a fantastic way to use your fingers to be able to develop recognition and understanding, to include sensory in the letter development as well. If you use magazines, they can cut out letters and glue them onto a collage to make an alphabet collage. To do letter sounds, you can do things again with the letter hop game. You can expand to like level 2. So instead of just doing the letter names, now you can do letter sounds. Find me the letter K, find me the letter P. You can do all those different letter sounds and get them practicing which letters equal which sounds. There's a really cool app called Endless Alphabet that I've always enjoyed with my little girl to be able to practice letter sounds. So basically what happens is there's a word and the word gets knocked apart, and then the letters are scattered all over the screen and you have to drag them back into their space. But as you drag the letter, it says its sound the whole way. So and it comes back over to the shape of the letter that it needs to be in. It's got a little outline for the shape. So this kinds of thing reinforces the understanding that letters have sounds, so that when they start getting to the phonics section, they can start putting the sounds and letters together. You can do things like fish for a letter or play Bananagram Junior, where there's tiles that have letters right on them. You can do activities like they pull out the tile or they fish for a letter, and they have to tell you the letter's name, the letter's sound, and if they can think of a word that starts with that letter or that sound. It becomes a little fun game and a challenge for them to be able to do it. Of course, you can also just do a simple thing like go on a scavenger hunt for finding things that start with the specific letter sound. Let's run around the house and see if we can find all the things that start with the letter D. And today you go looking for daddy and donuts and dogs. Okay, so these are fun things that you can do together. Just a fun language game as you go. Of course, silly songs like the Banana Fana game, Banana Fana, Fofana, becomes familiar with letter sounds, and they understand that words don't make sense when you change things up sometimes. To be able to do a difference between consonants and vowels, you can just simply do a cheerleading challenge. So every time there is a vowel, you cheer, or you do an action for every different vowel. So every time there's an E sound, so okay, let's do cat. So we have k, a, t. Okay, so we have an a or an A. So every time we do an A, we have to do a cheer. Okay, it's silly, but it helps know. The other thing too is when writing, to make it more fun, if you're doing letters on the board, or you're getting your child, or their child feels like writing, they can write the consonants in a different letter. I'm not really too concerned about understanding vowels and consonants in the early years, but it's something that pops up in a couple of curriculum, so I thought I would mention it as well. Now, for the concept of understanding nouns and verbs, in the early years, they mostly talk about the action verbs because understanding concepts such as happy and feelings are kind of really challenging for the little ones. In fact, I still find it confusing because I've always thought of it as an action word. But in the early years, we're going to talk about how to make understanding between a difference between a noun and a verb. So a noun is a person, place, or thing, and a verb is an action. So what do? You do the action and you go to the thing. So if you are doing a fun game with your kids, you can do this game where you say jump and they jump, or you say the word couch and they have to run to the couch, or you can say scream and they have to scream, and then you can say cookies and they have to run to the cookies. Okay, so the idea is to, if it's an action, do the action. If it's a thing, go to the thing. So it kind of helps them understand different understanding between noun and verb. For syllables, what do we all do with syllables? We clap our hands. Disestablishmentarianism. That's a long one. But if we clap to every syllable, it becomes this understanding of rhythm and beat and how words are broken down. You can also do hopping if clapping is a challenge. I know with kids with math music, sometimes the idea of clapping becomes off the beat, so it can be a little challenging to hear it. But if they do hopping, kids love to hop, so they can hop up and down as they talk their name, for example, or their word. They can break it down into simple things. I forgot to mention one thing about nouns and verbs. The other thing that you can do is a 20 question game for nouns and verbs. You can pick a word and you have to get them to answer the questions, or they ask you the questions that'll help break it down. Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it a thing? Is it an action? And then they can break it down from there. Back to syllables. Sorry. So the other thing you can do with syllables is make word piles. You write different words down on cards and then have them sort them into different piles based on how many syllables that there are in the words. For sight words, you can do word touch. So you put a word on a wall and they have to touch the right word. So if the word that you're trying to do today is can, the word is on the wall and they have to find which word is can and touch that word. It just becomes an action game that recognizes the words. You can also do things like use your magnets that we've talked about earlier, or letter tiles such as Scrabble or Bananagrams, or anything that allows you to have individual letters that they can copy the letters. So for example, you put the word can card down on the table and they have to match it with letters that they have as well. So I call that build a word. For story sequencing, you can just play an and then game where you build a story together. So once upon a time, there was a little girl, and then the next person has to complete the next section. And you want to make the story have a logical sequence, because it wouldn't make sense for once upon a time, there was a little girl, and then she went to bed, the end. All right, that's cool, but you wouldn't want to put, once there was a little girl and she went to bed and played with some dolls, because she's sleeping at the bed. So you kind of want to help them understand if it makes sense to go then. We call it the and then game. Print out pictures of a stories in action. You can probably find lots of free printable versions of these where there's a story sequence, and they have to be able to put the tiles in order to make the story make sense, because you wouldn't want to eat the popcorn and then get out the bowl. You want to be able to get out the kernels, get the popcorn popper, pop the popcorn, eat the popcorn. If you completely mix up one of their favorite stories and you tell it to them, they will realize that something is wrong, and then they will help you put the sequence back in order. If you make it silly, they will be able to enjoy it along the way. The goal of language is just to develop this language and this understanding of how letters work together to make stories and words and letters. So if you can teach some of the basic stuff through play, instead of having them sit down and do structured learning, they will be ready with the foundational learning of language as they move forward.